Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about some skills that you should master in order to differentiate yourself and succeed in becoming a software engineer, right? This is especially important because what you're going to realize as you're applying for jobs, as you're trying to get into the job market, is that there's going to be a ton of other candidates. There's going to be so many other people going for the same job that you want. And if you can, differentiate yourself in any kind of way, it'll definitely increase your chances of getting a job and at least getting an interview, right? So there's a couple of skills that you can learn early on in your career that'll help you exponentially in getting a job, right? And these are things that you're going to learn on the job anyways. But I figured that I can tell you guys this, before you're actually in the job market, before you're working full time, and let you guys learn from my mistakes, right? So that you don't have to make them yourselves, right? This is the point of this video, and that's what we're going to be talking about, right? So before we get into the video, my name is John Vine, and what we do on this channel is I try to use my experiences to give you guys some tips on how to become a software engineer. Now, this is whether you're a student or trying to switch career paths, this video is for you, and I just basically do my best to help you guys achieve your goals. If you like the content, feel free to like and subscribe. So the first skill that you should master, and I've talked about this before on the channel, is your communication, right? You want to be able to communicate technical concepts to other people. So when you're going to be working as a software engineer full-time, you're probably going to be working in a team. There's probably going to be other developers working with you. And what you're going to want to be able to do is communicate quickly and effectively, right? You want to be able to tell someone what you're doing, especially if it's technical. You want to be able to explain it quickly so that you don't have to reiterate it and say it several times, right? If you're discussing very technical concepts, the quicker you can get your point across, the better. And vice versa, if someone else is telling you things and they have to explain it several times, there's really a gap in communication and you're not going to be able to work as effectively together. In some ways to practice this, or just to communicate as much as possible, try to, if you have no one to communicate with, try to write things down, kind of explain it to yourself and maybe explain it to other people so that you just get into the habit of communicating, because guys, communication is such an important skill and there's so many developers out there that are really good at coding that you can get the job done when it comes to coding, but then when they have to communicate in a team and talk to someone else about it and work together, they really lack in those skills. And if you can master the skill of communication, of explaining technical things to others, being concise and efficient, then it's going to set you apart so much. Now, not only this, but when you're working in a team and you're probably going to be working with people that aren't engineers, right? That don't really know the technical side of things, but you're going to have to explain it to them. If you could be able to explain technical things to someone who doesn't know, the technical side of it and get them to understand what you're doing, that is such an important skill because you're going to be communicating with other people, let's say marketing or sales or product, and you're going to have to tell them, what's going on or what's going wrong, for example, and why certain things are happening. If you can explain it to them concisely and take a technical concept, break it down simply and explain it to someone who has no idea, what an array is or what a for loop is and what all this nonsense is, and they can understand you, that is such a great skill to have, and it'll definitely be noticed when you're communicating, right? And this is also, think about an interview. If you're trying to communicate to someone interviewing you and to explain to them what your code is doing, right? And you're not able to communicate these technical things, then it's not really gonna look good. So guys, really try to practice your communication skills, try to write things down, maybe keep a journal of some sort. If you're working on a side project and there's something complex, maybe write it down so you can explain it to yourself, and just keep this habit of practicing communication, because it's such a vital skill that not a lot of people think is important, right? A lot of people think you just have to learn how to code to get a job, but if you can communicate very well, it's key. Now, another very important skill to have and that you guys should start working on as early as possible, I'm talking about right when you start coding, is trying to write clean code, right? So at the beginning, obviously, you're going to be writing, code that doesn't really work as well as it should. You're going to be focusing on just getting the job done and, getting a function to work, for example. You don't care if it's the most optimal, if it's the most efficient, or even if it's the most concise, something that should take a couple of lines. Maybe it's going to take you a lot of lines to write, but that's okay, right? Because you're just learning. But as you grow, you should be able to practice writing clean code. For example, you want to make your code very concise, or you want to write a function that's reusable and that only does one thing and one thing well, right? You want to make it easy to understand and easy to read, right? Like imagine if a book you were reading, you had to skim through it a couple of times or reread a certain page 10 times to understand what was going on, right? It wouldn't be that good of an experience. And this applies to coding as well. Now, if you can master this, the future you is going to be so thankful because, you know, a couple months down the line, when you go back and work on a project that you haven't worked on for a while and you don't really remember what the code is doing, right? If your code is clean and concise and easy to understand, you'll be able to hop in and make changes and be up to date as soon as possible. But if you go back and you see, wow, my code, I have no idea what this is doing, it's really going to like ruin your productivity. And this also applies, like I said before, you're probably going to be working in a team as a software engineer, and that's probably means that other people are going to be using your code, reading your code, and maybe making changes to it or using it in another part of like an application. And if your code is very hard to read for other developers, it's really not a good look because it just ruins the productivity of the entire team. You want your code to be as easy to read as possible, and you want it to be very, very, you know, free-flowing. And also, you know, going back to interviews, if you can write very concise, very clean code during an interview, then, you know, it'll definitely increase your chances of getting a job. If you're, you know, answering a coding question and you're writing all this dirty code that you don't know what's going on and you're trying to explain it and they don't know what's going on, then that's not really a good look either, right? So writing clean code is definitely a very hard skill to master. I'm working on it myself. You know, it's hard to write clean, concise code, but you really have to get into the habit of practicing because collaboration is key in software engineering. You're going to be working with other developers. You're going to be revisiting your code. And if it's as easy to read as possible, it's a great thing to have. And the third and final skill that I recommend you guys work on and master is the ability to see a project through from start to finish. This is something that I definitely struggled with when I was an intern and when I was really learning how to code. What I would do basically is I would start on a project. I'd get super excited, right? Wow, okay, I'm gonna build this awesome thing. I'd make some progress, and then eventually, you know, as with any type of code you're gonna write, you run into some problems and you don't know how to solve it, right? So you get frustrated, and then maybe you spend a couple of hours or maybe a couple of days trying to figure out what's going wrong. And then what ends up happening is you get so frustrated, you're like, okay, whatever. I'm like 80-90% done this project. I'm just gonna do something else for now so I can feel more productive. And what ends up happening is you start a new project and you're all excited about it, you're working on it, everything's going well, and then bam, you get hit with another bug or another kind of problem that you don't know how to solve, right? So you can't keep flip-flopping between projects because when you're working full-time, they're not gonna hire you to complete 80% of a project. They're gonna hire you to finish it, to see it through to completion, right? So guys, you wanna be able to finish a project. This is really hard because, you know, the whole 80-20 rule, the last little 20% of the project is gonna take 80% of the time to complete. And that's 100% true because many times in my career, I've run into bugs that have taken me so much time to solve, but eventually I got there. And you have to really practice this discipline and this perseverance, or should I say stamina rather, maybe, because you're gonna have to try a ton of different solutions. You're gonna have to look at it through a different angle, maybe, you know, try to work on something else and then hop back into it, because that's usually when, you know, a lot of solutions come, as well as when you take a break. So guys, being able to finish a project is a very, very valuable skill that you're gonna have to have because, you know, you can't not finish projects. And what I wanna emphasize is that every single project you work on is gonna have this kind of thing. Like, for example, when I was working on code in college, doing assignments, every assignment, there would be times where I would be spending hours on one small problem. And this is something you have to get used to, guys. This is the bread and butter of being a software engineer. There's gonna be times where there's gonna be a problem that's like pretty complex, you won't be able to solve it, but your job in that situation is to solve that problem. Now, what I found to help in these times is to take a big problem and kind of break it down into a series of smaller problems that you can tackle one by one. Then before you know it, you've solved the whole problem, right? This is something that's helped me a lot in my career and in my, like, when I was in college and stuff like that. But yeah, this is gonna happen a lot. This happens to everyone. You can't get into the trap of thinking, oh my God, why am I so stupid? Or why can't I solve this? Because this happens to everyone. Even the most experienced developer is gonna run into these bugs. The only difference between them and you is that they're gonna be able to really, really solve those problems. That's where that experience comes in, because they've done it so many times before. And so how can you get better at this is by completing side projects, by really challenging yourself. And when you inevitably get to this, you know, bug or a problem that you don't know how to solve, just try to find solace in the fact that this is gonna happen again. This isn't the first time it's gonna happen. And if you can start now and get this problem out of the way, then that's gonna give you a bit of confidence, it's gonna give you a bit of experience, and you're gonna know that you're gonna be able to do this. So you really, really can't give up when you run into these obstacles, because that is really the test of it. Can you do the job and can you succeed as a software engineer? So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. These are just some small topics that I think are very beneficial for software engineers. And like I said before, if you guys start working full-time, you're gonna run into these kind of problems, and you're gonna realize that these skills that I mentioned today are very important. So I just again wanted to share these with you so that you guys can get started on working on these skills as early as possible. So guys, if you've enjoyed the content, feel free to like and subscribe. If you think there's anything I missed, feel free to leave a comment down below if there's anything that you agree or disagree with, or just anything you want to add in general. So yeah guys, like and subscribe and have a great day.